Welcome back to another video from Phantom Debate. We're going to be doing round videos and other skill breakdowns on this channel. And in this video, we're going to be going over delivery. To watch more of these videos, subscribe to our channel. And if you want to learn more about public forum or become a better public forum debater, click the link in the description below to our summer workshop. So in this video specifically, we're going to be going over the art of the delivery, but we're going to be looking at it in terms of a round breakdown, seeing how other skill debaters deliver their speeches, mainly their final focus speeches. So in this video, rather than going through the entirety of a 45-minute public forum round, breaking out down delivery, which kind of seems redundant, we're just going to be going over two speeches from two different debate rounds. Both are final focuses. So the reason why I chose the final focus speech is because this is where the delivery is the most emphasized. It's where debaters really stress about how the speech is delivered because it's the last speech of the round, and it's where that we can break down way more things that debaters are doing because they're going to be presented more clearly. But just remember that just because you're in constructive and or first summary, the same tips apply about delivery. So just because we're doing a final focus breakdown, make sure you apply it everywhere in the debate round. So this is the first round that we're going to be breaking down. It is the Nueva round in Berkeley's, I believe, octos or quarters. So this is a very high-level round, but the delivery in the speech makes the round very simple to understand. It's like you've been watching the last 50 minutes of this round. So before we jump into the video, a couple things you want to observe. One, does this delivery make you feel like you've heard constructive or you kind of understand how the round is playing out? Two, does the delivery of the speech, what are making you emphasize a couple of things? What are you remembering from the speech? And is that something that is emphasized by the debater? And three, do you feel like you can remember the most relevant information, or like how important each piece of information was? So when you're writing your RFD, for example, for this round, or you just want to give feedback on the speech, you know kind of where to start, right? Is it a clear order? So let's jump into this final focus speech.
Wayne, RC2, and their C2. Everyone ready?
So notice how we gave the roadmap, and it's not the traditional roadmap, as you can check the video that I did last time about just delivery. The roadmap isn't a traditional our case, their case. It's more tailored, and that's going to help his delivery. And it's also going to help, kind of tie back the whole narrative. But if you haven't checked out the previous video, stop this video, go back, and I'll just go over the tips of delivery in that video.
Did you hear that? Okay. All right. Time starts now. They have conceded in every speech that recession prevention is going to be the most important impact. Their only response in the first final focus is that recessions are inevitable. Consistently, there's no warrant extended other than, quote, boom bust cycle. Our Hart's evidence is highly specific in saying high rates of growth can avoid small economic shocks and pushing us into a full recession.
Okay. So this is the first step of delivery. It's the emphasis of things that are important, right? So the way he's doing this is putting emphasis on certain words. Conceded in every speech, right? Hey, it's telling the judge that this has been conceded in every single speech. It's probably something you should write in your RFD, right? So the judge in their RFD is probably going to be like, I'm voting on this economic growth argument because it has been conceded in every speech, right? This is the narrative. Economic growth is the narrative in the round. It's been conceded in every speech. And words like high economic growth prevents economic shocks. Stressing of certain words is very important here.
That means that their only argument has no warrant. Our warrant in the Hertz evidence is very specific in saying if we have high growth, we will not go into recession. Then, extend the argument how mitigation does not matter. This is conceded. All their stabilization arguments are about mitigation in the US. But we tell you that if 900 million people go into poverty in the developing world due to cyclical and generational poverty, all their offense about mitigation in the US do nothing for the hundreds of millions of people in other countries. That is all dropped. If there's even a risk that we stop a recession, we access all these 900 million people. Let's go.
Yeah, so another thing to emphasize is numbers and other, important weighing mechanisms here. So long-term solvency, scope, magnitude, and the 900 million, right? So we outweigh on 900 million people. They don't get access to those 900 million people because there's hundreds of millions of people in the developing world who don't have access to basic, automatic stabilizers that are present in the United States, which means we outweigh on scope, we outweigh on magnitude, and we have outweigh on the long-term solvency, right? You want to emphasize those things, that way the judge catches it, right? The long tailored warranting becomes less and less important because you've already repeated it, right? So you now want to hit on the things that matter to the judge, the weighing mechanisms and the numbers that the judge is going to be remembering. Because quite honestly, there's only so many warrants that a judge is going to remember by the end of the round, even when looking on their flow, right? So you want to make sure that when you're giving your speech, that the few important details of the warranting hit the judge, as well as the other, I'm not, buzzwords is kind of a word, but more of the big statistics and numbers that are more likely to be imprinted on the judge, along with a few minor details, like this has been so far, high economic growth prevents economic shocks, and that people in developing world don't have automatic stabilizers.
To the DAs they read. First, they read inequality. They drop our more specific UN evidence says a UBI specifically would give workers the ability to bargain, and our CRGC evidence tells you we'd overall decrease inequality by 0.14 points. Prefer us because we're far more specific, A, on a UBI, and B, how much inequality would go down. But their second argument is about growth being bad. One, the course evidence is highly specific in saying a 1% increase in trade-related income, which comes via growth, would lead to a 1% decrease in emissions. But second, this DA has no impact extended in summary, and even if you call for the impact card, it's horrible. It's just very generic. This is no way this outweighs our case. Let's extend our argument. Our Matthews evidence has given.
Okay, before he goes to extending their argument, the second thing of delivery is, can you remember where the information was? Can you sort of give back the roadmap by just looking at the speech without knowing the roadmap, right? And this is done through the signposting, right? Signposting is very important. You're going down on this response, 2 responses, 1, 2, numbering the responses and doing signposting is really important because it helps the judge flow. It also helps you know where you are at in relation to how much time you have left, so you can pace yourself accordingly. And it's way more formal, and it also makes you sound really, really good when you can go on their first response. 2 things, 1, 2, and it makes you kind of that robotic in sense of rhythm, right? But you're sounding, very human, but the way you're moving down the flow is very methodical and systematic. And that's going to help the judge just understand your case so much better, right? This is also should be done in rebuttal speeches when you're going down their case on their first argument of this couple of responses, boom, boom, or 2 warrants here, 1, 2. Numbering out and signposting is going to be very, very important, especially when you're moving across the flow in the back half of the debate.
$1,000 to the low and middle class would create $2.5 trillion for spending, and ZESA finds that causes 12.6% of growth. That's important for 2 reasons that are both dropped. The first is the private investment solvency from NARA, and tells you the single best way to solve a recession is by private investment. That's also acts as their mitigation argument. But second, our Aiken evidence is dropped. Sorry, our Hertz evidence is dropped. That says high economic growth prevents shocks from causing recession. We are accessing recession prevention. Let's go to their case.
Okay, so a big myth about extensions is just summarizing your case. Well, we're just going to just do a 30-second thing of our case. In reality, extensions are important because they help the judge understand your argument on a deeper level, right? You're not just, because in case is when you explain it the most. In rebuttal, you're not really explaining it that much. You're giving just a couple quick warrants. Oh, they've conceded this warrant, they've conceded that warrant. in reality, you want to be able to, when you're extending, you want to flesh out this analysis and emphasize how your argument works with certain words, right? Again, the same words are being emphasized. High economic growth, 16%, and the card names as well, right? This creates the sense that you've been telling a story, and also that your story is super, super important, right? And it helps sort of your whole narrative in the final focus. And it's important that you're delivering this really, really, really well by emphasizing and saying, on our argument, this is what it is, and this is why it's important. Now he's going to be frontline.
Like drop defense. First of all, they say they prevent a recession from being worse. That's definitionally mitigation, so they don't have access there. But second, our Shiner evidence says 75% of automatic stabilizers are not mean tested. It's taxation that exists in both worlds. There's a drop, non-unique or mostly non-unique on their case, but even if you buy their case, stabilization happens too late. I mean, hundreds of millions of people in the developing world go into poverty. If you vote for us, you can actually have a risk of stopping a recession, which means you have access to all the weighing. The weighing is dropped, the non-unique is dropped, and the offense is dropped.
So, when you heard this speech, there was a couple of things that he did at the end. He gave himself 5 seconds to say, kind of summarize the entire speech, right? Like, even if you're going to be voting, even if you try to pull the trigger from the neg, it doesn't work for a couple of reasons. And then he says, the weighing has been dropped, our offense has been dropped, and the turns have been dropped. It is over at this point, right? Finishing your speech like that kind of helps the judge be like, you're right. It's like another, it's like classical conditioning. You keep presenting the same thing over and over again, and the judge is more likely to buy it or be persuaded by it. So, but it also helps you from a presentation standpoint, because your judge has just been dumped with information very quickly to help kind of close it and kind of present it in, a more easier consumable manner. So this is the second final focus speech I wanted to go over. This is on the UNCLOS topic, right? The other one was the UBI topic. This is the UNCLOS topic. The United States should accede to the United Nations Law of the Sea. So essentially, this team is the negative team. It's the last speech of the round. Again, let's keep these same tips in mind. Emphasizing certain words and warranting. Number of statistics are all very important to emphasize. Presenting a clear order, signposting, and numbering off responses. And then also kind of summarizing the whole debate at the very end.
Is everyone ready? So I'm going to sort of climate change versus China with you. Okay. My opponent comes up and tells you that any impact of climate change is a worthwhile impact. That just simply doesn't make any sense. They say one leg, we say you shouldn't prioritize that. That's like come up in here and saying that our case solves a little bit of Trump getting a little bit less leverage. No, we've said that they actually applied some scope of their impact. Otherwise, there's really no way to weigh this argument. Our argument is just simply so much more direct. We say that any degree of climate change is bad. We give the historical example that the last time China invaded one of these countries, even in only a 6-week conflict, it killed 50,000 people. Our argument is just much.
So this is, again, the same thing that the previous final focus that we saw. It's sort of framing the round in final focus. Yes, climate change is a thing and exists, but it can't be more important in this round because they don't contextualize or weigh this argument comparatively to our argument, right? That's really the framing and creating the whole narrative to the judges saying, well, this climate change argument exists, but I will always prioritize and look to this China argument first. I think it's really important in final focus. You start off by saying why your argument is the most important thing in the round, and then going to explaining that argument just helps the judge much, much better. And that's something with delivery here. The second thing was looking at, the numbering of or emphasizing of responses, right? Our impact is more direct, right? Emphasizing the word direct is like, okay, judge picks up on that. And the judge is like, okay, I remember the neg team saying that their link is far more direct into their weighing, and I kind of agree with that, right? Couple of keywords to help the judge remember their argument or why it's important.
Direct and has a much more personal impact. That here's how we win the China will invade them. Right now, they drop our incomplete evidence that says that the U.S. is backing off the global stage, which is producing tension because the U.S. presence is the root cause of Chinese aggression. When the U.S. sees when China sees the U.S. is amping up its aggression, just like as Noah Fan during Crossfire, it makes them become more aggressive. The one response my opponents respond is that China has some degree of economic coercion, but China already has economic coercion, has no expensive Crossfire, no expensive summary. So does Russia. Russia has had economic leverage over every single country in Eastern Europe, but by affirming, it shows that economic coercion is not working. The Duterte example is very crafty because Duterte is literally saying that the reason why he's on China's side is because he sees China as a more credible ally. But once the U.S. joins, according to Duterte, it signals that the U.S. is now on their side, which makes the perception that allies flip. They drop our evidence that's really good from Chang and Holmes. It says that this perception causes a rampant cycle of nationalism, which just like the invasion of Crimea, means that there was a greater risk of an invasion. Now,
okay, so one thing that this extension is really good, telling the entirety of the story, right? One thing to add here, that rather than just saying, oh, they dropped everything, right? You want to say they dropped the most important piece of evidence, right? So when you look at your case, what is the most important piece of evidence when extending that they drop or mishandle? Sure, they may drop 3 things, right? But explaining that they drop this, right, from your own case, it is like, okay, it doesn't matter, right? You need to find one thing that they've dropped, right? That is the most important thing. If there are 3 important things, they drop the uniqueness, that blah 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 blah. If it's dropped the link, da 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 da, and the impact is whatever, right? But that's one thing. But that's if they're presenting a different uniqueness picture. Like if they're running 2 China arguments, and you're saying, oh, they dropped this, right? Normally, because this is a climate change versus a China nationalism argument, you don't really need the uniqueness evidence. You don't really need the link at this like impact scenario, 50,000 lives. That doesn't matter. The one thing that does matter is the link about how China gets more emboldened with the United States because they see that, general economic coercion isn't working to push the United States out. You need to be like the most important offense that is for case evidence that's been dropped in the round by the affirmative is this piece of evidence. This ends the round entirely because of this and this reason, right? So rather than just saying, oh well, they dropped this evidence, they dropped this evidence, they dropped this evidence, they dropped this evidence, when you're extending your own case, because the judge gets it, like the argument has been dropped, right? But what is the most important piece of evidence they drop, and say they drop it and really blow this up, right? You want to make one thing seem really, really big, because when the judge keeps hearing, oh, okay, they dropped this, they dropped this, they dropped this, it's better when you do it on the entirety of the flow rather than just on your case. It just sounds repetitive and bores the judge.
The place that you can vote is on disturbing the ecosystem and releasing methane. Remember the physics evidence that goes cold drop at no extent, which says any disturbance to the deep sea bed means dramatic harm to these species. Meaning, mining is any disturbance, meaning there will be a dramatic harm to these species. This will release 90% of methane that is locked onto the ocean floor. This does 2 things for us. Once, worse, it starts our external defense because they don't tell you how much they solve for climate change. This is at least a granted form of climate change. But 2, it probably outweighs it on scope. I would say that methane is much more potent, and the emission of tons of methane is a bigger impact to climate change than their small increase in renewable energy. But finally, they're not even going to win that any goes to renewable energy because of some important evidence. First, the Mijiaka evidence explains that even that renewable energy alternatives are already cost effective. I encourage you to call because it very explicitly says that decreasing prices has not been linked to rare earth metals. And the Richardson evidence says that there are cost effective ways their evidence is outdated. And finally, Teskey says we can go 100% green without needing the use of rare earth metals at all. Thank you.
So this here is the emphasis of they've dropped this evidence that says that ends this argument, it turns it indefinitely, it's game over, right? That blowing up of one piece of evidence and saying why it's the most important issue in the round. But the second thing that was done in the final focus, which was really good, is saying even if you buy this statement. That's going to help your delivery because one, you say, even if you buy this, their argument or whatever warrant, remember they have conceded this, or remember this is more important because of X reason. It sort of sets up your argument and your narrative, which makes it a lot easier to one deliver. It's an if then statement. It's a very simple kind of sentence structure, and it also keeps the judge engaged to your arguments, right? Because rather than saying, well, they've conceded this, they've conceded this, they've conceded this, there's always the lingering thought in the judge saying, like, oh, what about this, And there's plenty of times where I and several debaters have lost rounds where, they've dropped this, and you make it so clear to the judge. But the judge is like, I kind of like this one argument here. And then they try to work it out, right? So the way you want to prevent that from happening, prevent the judge from even thinking about this one argument, is you think for them, right? You say, hey, you may buy this argument that says this, but remember, you can't because of 3 reasons, right? Play the devil's advocate in your final focus. It's going to help your delivery by a ton. So those were the 2 main speeches that I wanted to go over. Both are final focuses. Both showed excellent delivery, and there's a bunch of hidden tricks and tips from those videos that we can see to help you improve your delivery, not only in final focus, but in rebuttal as well, right? It's always important to emphasize certain words. It's always important to state an order and off-tab roadmap and actually follow it, right? Numbering responses are incredibly important, showing structure, emphasis, and playing the devil's advocate, even if you buy this, you can't for 3 reasons, is a really important speaking style that you need to implement to help your delivery and help your speaker points go up a ton. Because remember, it's normally the better speaking debaters are often the better debaters in general, right? And the more you can connect with your judge through the delivery, the more rounds you will win. Regardless of your content or what's on the flow, the better you can deliver it, the more rounds you'll win. There are definitely teams out there that have all these cases, they take cases from everywhere, and these are the best cases imaginable. They got the best block file imaginable. They're not able to, have high records, but teams that don't have, the greatest prep on the planet find themselves in quarters or deep elimination rounds because they're able to present their arguments in a manner that the judge can consume. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to keep up with more content. And also, summer workshops are going to be starting in July. So if you want to register for those, click the link in the description below. And with that being said, have a great day.